I mean, I get why everyone's reviewing the P30 Pro and pretty much no one the P30. But it does not mean that I agree, because I would actually say it's wrong to ignore the P30, and I would actually go as far as to say anyone who wants a P30 should get the regular one. And anyone who wants a Pro should get the Mate 20 Pro, but not the P30 Pro. Because obviously this is not a flagship and therefore it doesn't cost as much as a flagship. But in my opinion, from my standards, this is also not a flagship. And I know it will piss off a lot of people now, but I'm gonna say this. It doesn't have a Quad HD display and it doesn't have a stereo speaker, but both of these things are available on the Mate 20 Pro. And here is something that a fellow YouTuber of mine said in a live stream, and I couldn't agree anymore on this regard. If a phone doesn't bring all the flagship qualities, especially since the previous one already had it, then it shouldn't cost as much, which in this case was $999, which by the way is already down to like a little over $800. This though costs about a little bit over $600 by now, where it started at $750. I have to say actually has a few advantages over the P30 Pro. Obviously those are subjective, like for example the design, the size and things. But I have to say this now is the very first phone that I'm giving 5 gold stars for the design. And it's not just because of the beautiful back, and we obviously have many other amazing color choices, but I definitely have to say it looks great. If you carry it around in a case and you don't like the fact that, then so much, but that is not something you can blame the phone for. Otherwise, what I like over the P30 Pro is that it has a flat front, that it's smaller, just easier to use. It actually has an amazing in-hand feel. It has pretty much the exact size that I want. Obviously, some people want it bigger, as you can see here. There is definitely a difference there. But for everyone who wants a, I would say still at least a little bit smaller flagship, this is one where you will make some sacrifice, like for example you lose out on the OIS on the main cam, but you also get so many pretty much just as close as to this one attributes, so you don't really lose out on anything else. Otherwise, we have a little bit of a curve on the back that makes it feel a little bit thinner, even though due to the bigger battery it's not a thin phone, but it feels so nicely weighted. It feels also a little bit wider, so not quite as tall as some of the edged phones. Then I also have to say ergonomics are great. It's so easy to reach the buttons conveniently, and these buttons, just as the whole build quality, are pretty much the best that I've seen, because the tactile feedback is so strong and it feels so great touching these. Also, the fingerprint reader, I would actually go as far as maybe to say that this might be the best in-display fingerprint reader. I mean, sometimes the one on the S10 actually didn't react, but recognized the finger faster, but this one feels way more natural because the screen turns on way faster. The position is actually quite good. It reacts very reliable, very fast, and I mean, I sometimes prefer a still one on the outside of a phone because you kind of feel where it is, but you get used to that position actually pretty well. And if you don't want to use it, there is an amazing face recognition feature as well, which is used by the front-facing cam that comes along with a notch. Now I have to say, I think this is at the moment still the best solution to get a pretty much bezel-less phone. I mean, the chin is small, the side bezels are still small, and this little chin could be hidden actually quite easy if you go, for example, to the display, more display settings and notch. This, in my opinion, is the best solution, because even with the notch hidden, so a black bar, this bezel is still very small, but it doesn't come in the way if you watch a movie, because then you don't see the notch. Due to the OLED display, it doesn't bother me, but I'm going to revert back to that because a lot of people always want to see the notch, so here you have it. And even that is not something that really is an issue. I mean, it gets in the way sometimes if you go into a feed. The black bar does that also sometimes, but especially due to the in-hand feel, obviously the glass will attract fingerprints, but it looks so nice. I have to say the in-hand feel, the quality, the premium feel, and everything else about this phone is pretty much just as good as it could be. And the only reason for some people why it maybe shouldn't deserve 5 gold stars is that the camera, if the autofocus gets that right, protrudes quite a bit. Not an issue for me, but it might be sorted out. What is maybe also a thing that should be noticed is that the phone is actually completely flat at the top and on the bottom. And if you get it right, it would actually stay on its own. It's something that you won't ever notice though, because some people said it's weird, but you don't feel this at all. It actually feels very good because you have a solid feel and it doesn't really do anything else. Now, microphone here as well, SIM card tray, then the speaker, USB Type-C, and the headphone jack, which is also one thing that we have over the P30 Pro. What we don't have in both cases is an LED from what I've seen. I think it misses. We have always on displays that I will go into later if I don't forget it, because I personally didn't use them because you lose out on battery life. In general use, I would actually activate it because these still offer so much battery that it doesn't matter. But for the review purpose, I kind of always want to know the maximum that I can out of it. But I would say enough praise of the design and build quality, ergonomics and everything else. So it's finally time to get into the display, which is an AMOLED display. And I have to say this, it is an AMOLED display and it's from Samsung. But it is not as good as on the S10e. I mean, we have the option for normal, vivid, default, and warm, and so on. And it is a very good display, but it's not a great one. Because, for example, what I've noticed is what you should do if you want the best possible quality out of this display, take off the screen protector, because that one is a little bit on the weaker side, because it attracts so much kind of lint and dirt and dust that you had to clean it all the time, which was actually pretty annoying. So I took it off, and then what I've noticed, what actually happened also, colors got more vibrant. The white got cleaner because there was like some little bit of a kind of veil over it. I still think it's not the cleanest white, but it's good. It's just not quite as high quality as 10e, so it's one step below, half a star obviously. But that does not mean that this is an issue. This is actually a better display than on the P30 Pro, which doesn't have a Samsung display. Not that that really matters that much, but there I've noticed this kind of clarity. Because I've noticed also, if you don't use a specific brightness level, the display itself feels a little bit dull, like kind of muted a little bit. But otherwise the colors are pretty nice. Contrast is something that could be a little bit better, but still, like I said, for the price, this is a worthy display and it is a very good one. Now, about the speaker. What I have to say here is, it is mostly loud enough. It could be a little bit louder, especially the P30 Pro is that tad little bit louder, but it's just bottom firing. And especially in times where, for example, the same price we can get an S10e that has stereo speakers, this just falls short actually by quite a bit, because I gave the S10 series 5 stars and I'm just gonna give this 4 stars because the difference is big enough in terms of volume and actual sound quality, because this one just doesn't sound as full, as rich, and definitely not due to the stereo effect quite as immersive and so on. But it's good. If you want a good speaker, you'll get that. But if you want the flagship speaker, you're not gonna get that just as much as the headphone jack. Because even though it's here, it is still as pretty much on every Huawei phone subpar. It is one of the weaker ones in terms of maximum volume, and it doesn't have quite the clarity or detailed precision and clarity like some other ones. But it gets the job done. Now, quality-wise of the performance, I have to say this. For some reason, it has one issue that I want to get into, which is, for example, YouTube. YouTube feed sometimes, not always for some reason, stutters pretty badly. And I mean, I obviously have the autoplay feature on, but in so many situations, this kind of gets stuttery. And especially, you can maybe see this already a little bit here, especially if you have a video running. I don't want to do that at the moment though, but we could actually start it, pause it, and then go down. Usually what happens then, it gets very stuttery. If the video is running, actually you notice this more. For some reason, this issue is not a thing on the P30 Pro, so I guess this is an update thing, but I've noticed this already on the past 2 or 3 Huawei's, so it still seems like there is an old software up preventing it from delivering it the best performance. Otherwise, though, in normal situations, I have to say, it is not quite as fast as an 855 and sometimes not even as an 845, but in daily use the little bit of stutters that you see don't really take much up, because it is smooth. It is definitely very smooth. It's not quite as crazy fast or responsive like some other phones out there, but in daily use it's still such a high level that I don't think that matters. So I'm good with that. It also doesn't really get all that warm, so gaming is also a really good thing. And the next thing that is even way better is the battery life, because I just have to give you the stats. Half an hour, 66%. 1 hour, 96%, and 1 hour, 10%, and you are at 100%. I mean, that's an absolutely great value, just as much as 7% for 1 hour of YouTube, which is pretty much one of the best values out there. I think 6 was the best that I got once or on 2 phones. Now, battery life. If you have always on, you will lose out, I would say, on almost an hour of screen on time. That's what I've noticed. It seems to kind of not quite have the phone so much on idle, and therefore it just drains a little bit more. But I would say with always on off, about 7 hours. I would say like 6.5 to 7.5. Some people might even get like 8 hours, but I would say on an average 7 hours with data only. and even 10 hours, maybe a little bit plus on Wi-Fi. And over a course of 2 days in a mix, I would say still 6 hours plus. And like I said, with always on, maybe take off an hour. Now, I was thinking about if I should give this 4.5 or 5 stars, but I checked and it's so close to values from the Redmi Note 7 that I reviewed, which got 5 stars, so I have to give this one 5 stars as well. Just to also make up for the difference, because something like an S10 got only 4 stars, which just delivers maybe 4.5 hours. So there has to be a bigger difference. That's just half a star. So pretty pleased with it. Even though I have to say, battery drain, I think on Android Pie is just not as good in standby. So yeah, that's that. Now let's get into the software here. What we have is a launcher or not. That's your choice. We have the Google feed. We have a theming engine. We have the tiles. We have quite a lot of options, like for example hiding the notch, also switching from the navigation buttons to on-screen gestures, and a lot of other things. Even though I have to say there aren't nearly as many useful little tweaks and options, like for example on Samsung. And I would almost have to say that this software didn't really evolve over the last 1 or 2 years. It is kind of stuck at the same functionality and also with the same bugs. Because for example, what I've noticed is that, like I said, the YouTube, especially picture-in-picture bug is still there. Then, for example, that could be a software thing, a display thing, or a software thing. SwiftKey has, if you type with it quite quickly, a little bit of a delay. And what it also does is it still likes to do one thing. If you go into developer settings, I know that's more of a geeky thing, and you want to change the DPI, which I have set to 420, which is usually by 360. After restart, it reverts back to that, and it also reverts sometimes the brightness back to auto. And since I'm already talking about that, I actually didn't mention that in the part for the display, but is screen dimming that I always hated on so much still a thing? And even though a few people told me no, yes it is. Because out of the box it still does dim in a lot of apps. Now why am I not really complaining this time? Well, because by now I know the solution. You have to use an ADB command, then kind of turn off the, I think it's called Power Genie or something like that, and then there is no dimming anymore. I am good with that solution. It shouldn't be necessary, but it is what it is. And generally I have to say that the software is still the same. I'm just hating a little bit less on it since I got kind of used to it. So RAM management is still a little bit on the harsher side, but therefore you get quite good battery life after all. And the settings usually by now do what they are supposed to do with, for example, lifting on the display to turn it on and so on, and all these kind of things. Something that I actually forgot are things like, for example, call quality and Wi-Fi reception and so on. So about these, well, call quality, I didn't really notice anything out of the ordinary, so it was fine here. Also, mobile data connection was absolutely strong. It was fine, no problems here at all. Wi-Fi reception, I would say, was a little bit weaker, but once I had a solid connection, actually Wi-Fi was amongst the fastest ones out there, because I got like about 16 to 18, sometimes 20 megabytes per second, where for example on an S10 I got like 16, so a little bit more here after all. And when I compare this to my OnePlus 5T that gets like 8 or 9, this is definitely a noticeable advantage over some other ones in that regard. I would like to go into the camera right now, but I'm not gonna do that since I actually made a specific video that is almost 40 minutes long just for the camera, and also comparing that one to the P30 Pro. It was that very detailed video with a lot of video samples. To keep it short, you will mostly lose out here on the P30 Pro, on the P30 over the P30 Pro in low light, because the selfie camera is the identical one. The low light qualities, like I said, are a little bit weaker since we don't have OIS. It's still a very good low light camera. Main camera in good lighting situations, I had an extremely hard time to actually seeing a difference between those two. So here in that regard, I would almost call them on par. Video quality was also very similar, but due to the OIS here, the video, you will see that in the sample, if you watch the review, was more stable. And even though we have EIS on quick movements, this still had some kind of shakiness going on. And that is actually already pretty much in, so let's get to the conclusion. So, what is my final verdict then? Well, before I'll get to that, I want to make a quick recap and start that off with this design that for me personally is pretty much perfect. I mean, it has just the ideal size, not too big, not too small. Great ergonomics, a great in-display fingerprint reader, a top-notch face unlock, and talking about the notch, it is pretty small and it can be hidden. And therefore it's not just a good solution, I would actually say at the moment this is pretty much the best solution to make a bezel-less phone. And along with those color options, there is a good reason why this is the first phone that got 5 gold stars. I mean, I couldn't give that quite to the build quality, which only got 5 stars, but that already means quite a lot, which I couldn't even give the display because after all, at a similar price point, there is an S10e which got 5 stars, and this is just not on that level. Doesn't mean that it's not still very good. Not quite very good, but just good is the speaker system. Also not on an S10e level, actually a little bit of a bigger difference here. It still is good. Not good, but very good is the performance, even though not quite yet on P30 Pro level. I think it needs like 1 or 2 updates to get to that level, but it should be there. And where it already is easily on a flagship level is battery, because it charges quick and it holds that charge for pretty long times very consistently. The software is still what it is. I mean, I'm easier to forgive a few things now that there is a solution for the dimming. There are still some smaller annoyances, but by now I can accept it because I got used to that. And then we get an overall camera experience that is actually closer to the P30 Pro than I expected, because obviously you lose out on a little bit of stabilization for video due to the lack of OIS. We don't get quite the low light qualities, but the selfie camera, the selfie video, and the main camera in good lighting conditions are actually so close that there is no difference. And after all, you can save quite a lot of money, which makes this actually in some way superior to the P30 Pro, since like I said, it is flat, it is smaller if you want that, it feels generally a little bit nice, it has the better display, and it just delivers for a lesser price. But I guess now you want to know, how does it fare against the S10e? Well, in terms of design, both are great, but like I said, this one is pretty much unbeatable for me at the moment. The display is better on the S10e, the speaker is better, performance is about on par. At the moment, the S10e has a slight advantage here, but a big advantage here for the battery life compared to the quite weak one on the S10, no matter which one you are talking about. Software, I give definitely a win towards the S10e because Android's or One UI is at the moment just better what Samsung delivers here. And well, when it comes to the camera, it depends on what's important for you. I think that the S10 generally has the better front-facing camera, the better video, and in some certain situations, a maybe nicer package for the main camera. But this one has better zoom functionalities, better low light qualities, and it is still a very good main shooter. So it comes down to what you want. And maybe one reason why this didn't end up as my daily driver is actually just the fact that I wanted stereo speakers. I just didn't get that here. But I have to say, the price at roughly over 600 euros at the moment, this package is actually very solid because it offers a lot for a good price on a high level. So yeah, this is the P30 that I would get if I would get one. And that's where I'm gonna end it. Until next time, bye.